we could computerize, but how do you enter the information? And all of us, when we saw this, simultaneously said a joystick. Okay, so the way we set ours up is the instructions were given on the screen of the computer. The person moved the bar here, the joystick, forward to represent increase and decrease. And the sample is presented in this form. And now we've reached the point where we don't even need the instructions here. We have it all in a series of signals in the signal box here. So you see, the subject would take the sample into the mouth, initiate the computer, start the joystick, and we would enter the information. Now, as I said, we don't even need the screen there to give instructions because the series of sounds and lights, we can have the whole thing synchronized and timed for using. So, using the old time intensity chart by chart recorder, it's very simple. If you're the Indian goddess Durga and you have 10 sets of arms, it's very easy. But if you don't have judges who are that ambidextrous, then you use by computer, and then even Venus de Milo can do it for you.
I think Pangborn would be right there with us. If you think about, she was very creative, and she really looked more broadly into other ways to measure people's responses, and technology helps you with that. So her early technology was, if you think about the time intensity method, right? So she had a moving chart recorder. She had built all this, somehow. They had a chart recorder. So the graph paper was going over there. She had put like numbers on this scale. You had a marker. You could start at 0. And then when you put something in your mouth, you would push this pedal down on the floor, which would start the recorder going. And then you would move your pen up and down against this slide, to show how intense it was. And the chart recorder then allowed it to create this time intensity curve. It was very, very creative. And then on top of that, she added salivary flow. Again, very, very creative. I mean, today we've got the computers to allow us, to do so much more, but she had to work with what she had at that point.
So when we think of the growth, I think that the growth is there. It's largely now because sensory science is an integral part of food science, and food science is expanding. The creation of new foods is really based now upon meeting consumer expectation. So we're actually designing foods in a much better way. So we have a more complete understanding before we start on what is going to be acceptable or unacceptable to consumers. And we've learned a lot about perhaps the application of sensory and consumer science to sustainability. So, what's sensory got to do with sustainability? And it is really about understanding how foods can be improved to be able to make them more nutritious and delicious at the same time. And it is that we combine many fields, and sensory science by its very nature is multidisciplinary.
From when I started, it was a lot more an academic sense, an academic science, if that makes sense. And I think over the years, it has really grown into the industry. And even now, I often just see more and more companies, food companies, starting sensory departments and being more involved in sensory. And I think it's also because they understand the benefit of the sensory. So I definitely feel that more industry clients are relying on sensory science.
So our field is very malleable and it's changed all the time, and this is amazing. As I said, our professors started a whole new world and showed many routes we could follow. However, I don't believe these roots necessarily have an end. Besides, they keep dividing in new ways. That's why we need to keep studying and preparing new professionals to have enough people to follow so many routes to see where we can get. In my opinion, we'll keep going indefinitely.
Thing that I really admire is that she made a tremendous contribution to the field as a researcher, but she did that mainly through a legacy of scholars that she influenced, and they are taking the field further. So I admire most the efficiency to positively influence a next generation of researchers.
But the change is definitely that's going to happen, and it will be much and more user friendly. You don't have to really go to your office or a central location test always. I think the more importantly, the home use test will evolve in a much more realistic way. So consumers will actually taste the product the way they are used to, rather than in a very laboratory environment.
I started my master's in early 2014, actually. And I feel even from there, it has grown tremendously, especially because I feel there is an open-mindedness in the community to adapt from other fields and apply them to our knowledge to grow. You take inspiration from psychology, neuroscience, statistics, and everything, and you grow. I think that open-mindedness is key for our community.
More incorporation of technologies, so things like virtual technology, virtual reality, also neuroscience-based technology like EEG, more and more in industry applications, and also in a lot of the research topics that are coming up. So I think that's also really exciting to see, because we are kind of moving and adapting to the modern era really